1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in they Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the Hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters gon' move. Whatever click you choose, you better
Say what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down! Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. Let's hop right up into this story, man. So this periodically from time to time, I get questions in my comment section, and if a person asks me a question that I think is an extremely good question, I try to turn it into a video. And so the topic today is going to be from a question that I got from an individual, and I believe you pronounce it Trece 916. So that's TRECE 916. So man, shout out to you for posing this, coming up with this good question, right? And he asked me, how did my family feel about me being in the street, right? So I definitely felt that that was a great question and something that I could turn into a video. So let's hop into it, right? So I think it's very important for me, once again, to remind everybody that I was from and am from a extremely small city, especially back in those times, right? I'm from a city that's called Banning, California, in the county of Riverside. The city is probably about I want to say maybe about 25 minutes west of Palm Springs, maybe about an hour and 30 minutes east of Los Angeles, right? Now it was it's a little bigger today, but it was extremely small in the 80s. From the research that I've done, the population was only 14,000 in 1980, right? And so let's keep in mind, like I say, it's an extremely small city. And I want to say that maybe street activities, cocaine, gangs, so on and so forth, stuff like that, really started hitting Banning like around 85, 86, somewhere around there. So if we keep in mind, right, that they say that the Crips originated in 1969. So by the time the Crip activity hit Banning, California, maybe 17, 18 years later in 86, you know. So when the Crip started in 69, my mother is already in her early 20s at that time. My father was probably in his early 30s, right? So they're fully grown and they've been living their lives without having any knowledge of this gang activity. And so later on, I'm assuming that, you know, when the Crips started getting more prevalent, they started hearing, they may have heard small things about them on the news, right? Because my father always watched the news, you know, he always wanted to watch the news. He watched the news every night. So, but it's still a difference when you are seeing about it on the news and when you are experiencing it firsthand, right? So I don't know how much, you know, Crip and blood related activity was on the news, but I'm sure, you know, it was on there periodically, if not more than that, right? So I say all that to say, by the time it reached Banning, my parents had little, if any, information about gangs and drugs and all that type of stuff. You know, my father or mother never used drugs, right? And so I would say maybe around 1986, 87, somewhere up in there is when I initially got familiar with crack cocaine. I had an older cousin who happened to be selling crack cocaine. Him and his friend, my homie as well, rest in peace, Scotty Ware, right? And so this is how I had my first introduction to knowing what crack cocaine was. Then a little later, me and one of my homies started selling crack cocaine, which I happened to get actually from a neighbor, one of my homegirls who had an older brother, and he was extremely deeply into the streets. And of course, so he was out there hustling. So I'm assuming she gave him some money to get her some drugs in order to double up or triple up the money. Because back then you could spend $100. Somebody might give you enough drugs to make $250, $300. And so she gave it to me and my homie to go out there and sell, bring her back a portion and keep us a portion for ourselves. Initially, you know, we got played, we got conned, we got gamed out of our money. You know, if you guys missed that cocaine era, man, I'm telling you, man, those smokers, it was some crafty, ingenious stuff going on with those smokers, man. I mean, that crack cocaine was off the chain, right? And so you know, they had a lot of con games going on, and you had to get familiar, excuse me, to what was going on, right? And so eventually I start getting into, you know, selling cocaine and things of that nature. Now, like I said, Bannon is an extremely, and especially was at that time, an extremely small town, right? So everybody who I grew up with, right, or the people who I had been interacting with, excuse me, I had been basically knowing them all my life in some type of way, shape, form, or fashion. Whether I was interacting with their children, going to, you know, school, playing baseball, little league, you know, basketball, YMCA, so on and so forth. You know, my father and mother had probably been friends with them, you know, for years and years and years. You know, Bannon was a small town, and the black community was even smaller, right? And so now keep in mind too, this is also back in a time when we are taught to be very respectful, not only to our parents, but to everybody else in the community. Because once again, like I said, we were raised around all these people that we are interacting with. I say this often in a lot of my videos. I would honestly like to say maybe 60-75% of the people I graduated high school with in 1989, I started off going to Head Start with probably in 1975, 76. So I had been knowing these people literally and practically all my life, right? And so, man, it was a trip. You know, like I said, when them drugs hit, man, it was a trip, man. It seemed like 1 month, 2 months, 1 or 2 months before, you may have seen an older, finer, you know, female that you have been knowing all your life, maybe 6-7 years older than you, walking down the street looking good. You trying to talk to her. She like, boy, get up out of here, boy. If you don't get your young ass up out of here, you know, because now, of course, when you getting 15, 16 years old, you coming of age, you seeing these nice ladies, you trying to holler at them. Boy, if you don't get your ass around, you get your ass up out of here. 2-3 months later, they coming back trying to suck your dick with their mama's VCR in their hand. You know, it was just like, man, that cocaine, man, just came through Bannon, and man, it was a trip. You know, it was like the older generation people, I would say maybe 5-6 years older than me, had got into those, you know, some of them had got into those drugs pretty heavy. You know, my generation, we always frowned upon drug use and cocaine use, I believe, due to the fact of how we were seeing it affected the older people who was using it. Like I said, man, you know, we all grew up with each other. So you may see a dude down there trying to sell his mama's VCR or trying to buy $200-$300 worth of dope, you know, somebody that you knew. And of course, we selling it to him. We trying to get that bread. Then maybe about 10 minutes later, his mama come down there in her house coat, you know, with her titties hanging all out. Hey, y'all didn't see such and such. He done stole my money. He done stole my money. So we like, damn, you know, cocaine was crazy, right? And of course, along with the cocaine, brought the drugs and so on and so forth, right? I'll never, ever forget, and I don't think anybody else will, who was from Bannon in that community around that time. It had to be 1986. I remember when I first heard the news, I was in the front yard of my Aunt Shirley's, and I remember having on my Banning High football jersey. So it had to be, you know, because I played football my freshman year, so it had to be 86. There was a close friend of everybody's, not only of mine, of the community. Her name was Kim. She was shot and killed by some drug dealers who were not from the city, right? And that really damaged and tore apart the city. You know, at this point in time, I believe Kim was maybe 16 years old, 15, 16, extremely pretty. She was a very petite girl. And back in those times and days, women, children, and young ladies was off limits, you know. And so for her to pass away due to being shot, it was just something that almost seemed unreal. And if I can honestly say, in my generation, from my class, in my era, that was our first tragic loss. You know, there was people older than I who had got killed and stuff in Bannon, but they was not from my generation. The first person that I knew close who was murdered and used to see on a day-to-day basis, or at least a weekly basis, several times a week, by going to the same school, so on and so forth, was Kim. And, you know, I believe along with me and others, you know, that started putting a bad taste in our mouth about gangs and individuals who was not from Banning, out there in Banning selling drugs and so on and so forth. Now, of course, everybody handles tragically differently, right? Some people, you know, got upset. Some people probably wanted to shoot and ride. So everybody handled that pain differently, right? And so eventually, like I said, I get into hustling, I get into selling cocaine. Now, when I'm selling drugs, I am still trying to keep my illegal street activities away from my parents, you know, which was extremely hard because at this time, my mother and father are separated. They only live maybe about a 5 or 6 minute drive apart. My father lives maybe about, I want to say, maybe about a 2-minute car ride from where we sell dope, where we sell drugs. It's up the street around the corner, maybe a 10-minute walk through a field and so on and so forth. My father lives the closest. So now when I get older, a lot of times I'm staying with my father because he stays really in the hood, right down from where, right down from Eastside Park, right down from where, you know, we're selling drugs, so on and so forth, right? And so my father, he was one of them type of dudes. He doesn't notice anything. You know, I could go over there with, you know, new clothes, new shirts, and this and that. He's not noticing. But my mother, she's the type, oh, hey, where'd you get those shoes? You know, I didn't buy you that. Where'd you get that shirt? So a lot of times when I was selling drugs and buying things, I would leave them at my homeboy DeAndre's house, you know, because my mom, like I said, she would notice those type of things, you know. And so for the most part, I'm just out there. I'm nowhere near doing anything major. You know, I may get $20, a $20 double up. Somebody will give me $40 worth of drugs. I'll sell that, get a $40 double up, get $80 worth of drugs, sell that, and just have enough money, you know, to do what I'm doing. I'm in high school and just getting through the week, you know, because I'm not, like I say, I'm not trying to do anything major because I don't want the activities to get back to my parents. So on and so forth, moving along. I remember maybe about being, I don't know, 16, 17. A dude goes and tells my father that I'm out there selling drugs. Now, I got extremely mad because this dude had just came through and bought $10 worth of drugs from me, right? The same dude that went and told my father that I'm selling drugs, right? And so my father, he comes to me. Now, my father was a no-nonsense type of dude, you know, when it comes to listening to what he said and so on and so forth. My father happened to be from a city known as Blackstone, Virginia, you know. My father had been into the military. He was no nonsense. He didn't play any games, and so you know, he definitely, you know, you definitely was gonna listen to him and respect him, you know. And so he comes to me. He says, "Hey man, you know, Elmer says you out there selling drugs. Elmer says he bought $5 worth of drugs from you yesterday." I said, "Man, that's a lie. I didn't sell." And I almost said I didn't sell $5 worth of drugs yesterday because I almost said I didn't sell a nickel yesterday. I've always had a great memory. And so I always could remember, okay, this dude came and bought 10. This dude bought a 20. This dude, if I had $140 worth of money in drug money, I can remember exactly each sale that I made. And Elmer did come through the day before and get a dime. He didn't get a nickel though. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm trying to hide this from my father, right? So at some point in time, my father basically forbid me from being in the hood, basically Eastside Park, you know. It was a certain area he didn't want me hanging at, right? Where we was known to sell drugs. And there was a time or two when I'm coming home from school, I'm walking through there, he would come on his motorcycle, and he jumped off his motorcycle and he got mad and he said, hey, didn't I tell you don't be walking through here? Get on this motherfucking motorcycle. Let's go, And so after that, when I would be out there selling drugs, sometimes he'd drive through, but I would hear his motorcycle. Vroom, vroom, vroom. I'd take off, I'd run, I'd hide in the bushes. My homies would be laughing and clowning. Oh, Chill gotta go. Chill gotta go. But yeah, if my pops had came through there and caught me out there, it was gonna be, he was gonna try to basically fight me, beat me up or whatever. And of course, I didn't want that embarrassment to go on in front of my homies. So I would run and hide. But now today, I see that he done all that stuff because he cared about me, right? And I wish I had took heed to his advice. So also, it was a weird dynamic because my brother, ever since about the age of 14, 15, my brother and I have always been total opposites. My brother was born August 9th. The following year, I was born August 5th. And so we are not even a year apart. We are 361 days apart. So when I have a birthday, before I turn 1, me and my brother are the same age for 4 days, and then he'll turn 2, so on and so forth, right? But me and my brother have always been exact opposites. I've always been into sports, outside playing. My brother has always been into studying, working. He was into computers before computers was a thing. I remember my brother back in the early 80s, he had saved up some money from working, got him a computer. He would buy these computer books from Alpha Beta, and he would program, these real now, the best way to describe them is these real, just old school looking games, just slow things going on. It looks really old compared to the games that they have today. And he would sit there and he would take literally sometimes 3-4 days until he'd have to type in this, type in that, type in this just to play. He'd make these games, and then he'd have this book and he'd read these things out of this book. And then once he do all that and it was time for the game to start, he'd press, hit return or whatever. And then the game would tell him, okay, error on line 42, blah, blah, blah. So he'd have to go back. He'd fix this, have to type in. It was just forever, But me and my brother have always been opposites, even though we're born in the same month. And so that's why I've never believed the horoscope type of stuff, because me and my brother have been the exact opposite. So my brother, around the age of 15, 16, he wanted to be a police. My brother wanted to be a police. So he joined the Police Exploiters, which is basically kind of like a Cub Scout edition of the police. So, he had these little uniforms. He'd go to these police meetings and stuff like that. And he, at some point in time, was allowed to do ride-alongs with the police. So on Fridays or whatever, he'd put on his little police exploiter uniform, get in the car with the police, and they'd be riding around. He'd be riding around with the police while they was doing whatever they doing. So now I'm out there in the hood selling dope. I'm on the corner selling dope or whatever. My brother go buy in the police car. Dude's looking at me like, hey, cuz, chill, what's up, cuz? What's up with you, homie? What's up? I'm like, man, what's up with your brother? I'm like, man, that's what he want to do. That's what my brother wanted to do. And so it was always just a weird, it was a weird dynamic. Now I would say somewhere around 86, probably 87, me, my homie Deshaun McGenzie, rest in peace, my homie Ed Scott, the homie Baby Drew, Ed Scott, we call him ED, the homie Scotty, I would say the homie K-Love, I don't want to put his name out there because he's working, doing real good, and the homie DeAndre, right? We originated our hood, my hood is called Eastside Player Gangsters. That was the original name that we had came up with. I remember we was tossing around and throwing around some names. Initially, we used to call ourselves the 8 Ball Posse because around that time, a lot of us was drinking, not myself, but a lot of us was drinking 8 Ball, the liquor 8 Ball. But then we heard Eazy-E say something about the 8 Ball Posse, so we didn't want to be called that. And so we came up with the Eastside Player Gangster Crips. Now, the younger generation, they began to call themselves the Eastside Park Gangster Crips because we all hung at the park, right? And so like I said, my generation, we are the first ones to come up, to come up with that name, right? And so once again, We're out there, we're running around, we're doing what we're doing, but I'm trying to hide all this stuff from my father. I remember when crack cocaine first hit, people are selling drugs and this and that, now they're having articles in the newspaper about rock houses being raided. Like I said, Bannon was a small town, old town. So you literally had some houses on certain streets in Bannon made of rock. The outside of the houses, they was the rocks were used to form the house, right? So you drive past and the houses are literally made of rocks. And so in this newspaper, they talked about a rock house being raided on a particular street in Bannon, right? So my father, of course, being from the country, older, curious, he wants to know what's going on. He drives on that particular street looking for a rock house. Now he's not looking for a cocaine rock house. He's looking for the houses that are made of rock. But on that particular street that the raid happened, there was no rock houses. So he comes back and he says to my mom, he says, hey, I drove down that Sutton Street. I don't see no rock houses on that street. We started laughing at my dad, right? Because like I say, he's old and country. No, we explained to him, they're not talking about the houses that's made of rock. The houses sell rock cocaine. And so this is how square and stuff my dad and them was to the game, right? I remember the first time, like I say, I'm denying my involvement in selling drugs and so on and so forth. So I remember the first time that my mother came to the realization that I was selling drugs. I was probably about 17. I had lost my house key. I was going to school. So I told her, can you look around in my room a little bit? If you happen to find my key, set it outside for me in a certain place and, I'll get it, right? So as she's going around looking in my room, I guess she happened to lift up my mattress and I may have had $400 or $500 up under there. And so later on, when I got home, she asked me, hey, where'd you get all this money? So on and so forth. I told her, I asked her, don't tell my dad, because like I said, my dad would have went crazy. He would have went ballistic. I explained to her and she was curious about as far as, how are you making this money? Because, in 1988, 89 or whatever it was, $400 or $500 for a 16 or 17-year-old was an extreme amount of money, right? So I remember, explaining to her, and I got some soap and I cut the soap up to show her, how crack was being sold and so on and so forth. And she was like, wow, that little bitty thing goes for $20. And I'd cut them up with a bar of soap. I cut them up way bigger than what $20 was, what a $20 rock was, So, and she was like, wow, that people pay $20 for that little thing. And like I said, the examples that I had showed her was way bigger than what was being sold for $20. So then me being a trickster, I never forget, man. So after I explained to her, and by this time, I had a motorcycle. My father had brought me a Yamaha Maximum. So I have a street legal motorcycle. I have a street driver's license. I have a motorcycle driver's license. So I hop on my motorcycle. It's maybe about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I hop on my motorcycle. I got the fake cocaine that I didn't cut up, the soap, right? I hop on my motorcycle. I drive up through the hood. I'm riding around. I happen to see this dude who was smoking, man. This dude who I knew to be a cocaine user. And so earlier, me and him, we had got into an issue. Now, this dude was a big old giant dude, man. I want to say maybe about 6'4", probably about 190 pounds, 100 and maybe 200 pounds. And that's when he's on drugs. That's when he's on drugs and smoked out and doing bad. When this dude would get out of jail, he would probably be maybe 255, 260 pounds. A big old giant dude. But like I say, he had a cocaine problem. One day he's walking through the field, back then, we used to harass, mess with smokers. He's walking through the field. My homies is messing with him. They throwing some small rocks at him. I'm not throwing no rocks. I'm chilling. It's 4 or 5 of the homies out there. We played too much, of course. We played and stuff. So they harassing him, messing with him. This dude walks up on me. Hey, man, you better stop throwing them rocks. I said, man, I ain't threw no rock up on you. You better get up out my face. I'm telling you, chill. You better stop throwing rocks. I'm tired of you. I went and picked up a big old giant rock, man. And I stepped back and I slung it at him. First, I thought I missed him. Then all of a sudden, he just fell forward. Bam! he started flopping. He was having a seizure. He was out there having a seizure. Now, just so happened, his father-in-law and his sister are walking, coming through the field from the store. They seen everything. His sister went and picked up another rock, a big old giant rock. And it was too big for her. She tried to throw it at me, but she could only throw it at like a foot or two because it was too big and heavy for her. So I went and picked up another big old rock. And he was like, please don't hit my daughter. Please don't hit my baby. Please, let's go. Let's go. He told the boy, Keith, man, I did not tell you don't be down there messing with these boys. I told you. Now, the dude who I hit in the head with the rock, his name was Keith. He's on the ground having a seizure. Now, I'm going to keep it 100 with y'all. I'm scared as all outdoors. I'm thinking, damn, man, I didn't just turn this dude into a flopping fish, man. I didn't kill this dude. He out there and stuff, shaking and stuff. And so one of my older homies came through and said, hey, y'all, I'm going to the center. Anybody want to go? The center is where we would go play basketball. So, yeah, I hopped in the truck and we got on. So ever since then, he say, man, I'm telling you, man, I'm going to kill you, man. When I get my crazy check, I'm going to buy a Uzi. I'm going to get you, chill. I'm going to get you, man. I'm going to get you. He used to tell me that all the time. So as I see him walking down the street that day, I pulled him over. I said, hey, Keith, come here, man. Homie, I'm sorry, man. You know what I'm saying? I feel bad about what I done, about hitting you with that rock. I want to clear the air, man, here. So I I had the bag of the soap that I had cut up, the fake soap, right? So I say, here, man, I want to make everything right. So I go in the bag and I give him 4 big old, like I say, I cut the 20s way bigger than what a $20 rocket was sold for back then. So I said, here, man, I want to make things right. He said, hey, man, I knew you was cool, man. See, I love you. I knew you was, everything is good between us, man. Everything. He gave me a big old hug and then ran in his house, right? So I'm rolling down the street on my motorcycle. I'm damn near about to crash because I'm dying laughing. It's funny because the excitement, that dude was happy as all outdoors. He was supposed to go in there and get his smoke on, you know what I'm saying? He was supposed to go in there and get high as all outdoors, right? So maybe about an hour later, I'm at the park chilling. He come down. I see him walking. You know, his homies hanging out now. I see him walking. He coming through the field. He say, man, you played me, man. You know, so I was laughing and this and that. Now, cold thing about it, later on, when I get into the shooting at the party that I spoke of, it was his party, right? It was his birthday party that I ended up getting caught and charged with those 3 attempted murders at, right? And so getting back to the story, when I happened to turn 18, it was like my father, he done a 360. You know, he no longer tried to harass me, stop me from selling drugs. Only thing he told me was just to be careful, right? And honestly, to this day, I wish that he had stayed on me in the same manner that he did when I was 15, 16, 17, so on and so forth. You know, it is my true belief that as a parent, you always are going to know better than your child. And regardless of the age of your child, it is your duty as a parent to always try to give that child wisdom, knowledge, and instill whatever knowledge you have in your child, regardless of his age. So I come to find out later on, right, that my father, when he was growing up, back in Virginia or whatever, he also had some family in Baltimore. He had a cousin who was the second biggest drug dealer, biggest heroin dealer in the city of Baltimore. And his cousin had asked him to, get on his team with him, sell drugs, because his cousin had a big old team of people out there selling heroin for him. So my father, he denied. He went on into the armed service, into the army. Later on, of course, my father's cousin, he ended up getting busted. You know, my father's cousin had houses, clubs, everything around Baltimore. The lawyer, so they hired some private attorneys and stuff. And this is probably, I don't know, maybe back in the 60s, 50s, somewhere around there. But the lawyer who my cousin's mother hired for him, they ended up running off with all the money. You know, he lost everything. He ended up going to jail. And so it was probably due to that negative experience that my father had with his cousin is why he did not want me to sell drugs, to get caught up in that type of environment, right? And so it was crazy because, like I said, once I turned 18, he just told me, basically to be careful, basically to be careful and stuff. And, my mother, she always was just, it's pretty much, she just told me the same, just be careful. They never really pressed me to stop selling drugs, so on and so forth. So now, fast forward, when I'm going to Montana and I'm coming back periodically with what seemed like a ton of money back then, $30,000, $40,000, $15,000, $16,000 at a young age of 18, 19. I'm in different cars, lots of gold. I come back, I give them money and so on and so forth. They never really told me, anything other than to be careful. Now later on, also, when I was out there in my street activities doing what I'm doing, my brother, by being, wanted to be a police explorer or whatever, my brother had bought a police scanner. Where back in those days, you could listen to the police activity, what was going on, you could hear everything over the police scanner. Nowadays, I believe that they have the scanners scrambled up and it's hard to get certain stations. But back then, you could hear everything, and so a lot of times when I would be out there involved in my street activities, I would call my mom. I said, hey, mom, what's going on up there at the park? What's going on this street? What's going on over here? Every time, I was out there involved in some gun activity, right? And so I'm assuming at some point in time, my mother caught on to, okay, he always asks me what's going on a certain street. She turns the scanner on and it's been a shooting or so on and so forth, right? But my mother never really tried to dissuade me, right? I remember one time, and I found out later on, right? One time, she told a girlfriend of mine who I just had a baby by that, I don't see why you want to be with Eric. Eric wants to run around here and be a gangster. You should need to basically get your baby and go live your life, because Eric is out here in these streets doing certain things that he doesn't have any business doing. And so I don't know why you want to be involved in anything like that. To me, I was extremely shocked to learn that, right? Because I didn't know that until my daughter's mother told me years later once I was in prison. But to me, it was extremely shocking because I had never heard my mother speak out against me in any type of way, right? And so also, when I finally do get arrested, like I said, my father was deeply against drugs. But once I got arrested, it's crazy, right? That my father started helping me get my drugs to Montana in order to hire my private attorneys, And man, after a while, that money got good to my dad. You know what I'm saying? So my dad he coming up there to visit me. We talking to the screen. He trying to give me all these hand signals. Yep, I got, because I still had the plug. So I, introduced my father to the plug. Yeah, my dad is coming up there trying to talk through the glass and visit him, but not say too much. I got 18 and I'm going to get 40 back and all these hand signals, one day. So I look up, my mom come telling my dad, now this money that I'm sending out there to Montana, like I said, I had a connection, man, where if I buy 9 ounces or better, I'm getting them for $300 a piece. So, that's a good connection, especially $300 a piece when I can take one back to Montana and sell it for $1,500, $1,600, easy. So I look up one day, my mom come to visit me. She told me my dad done went and bought a brand new Lincoln Mark V. Hold on, man, this money is supposed to be for the lawyer. So now my father, who was against selling drugs and stuff, he see how his money is coming. This money is coming easy. And my father get caught up and he start buying stuff and all that type of stuff, man. So, at the end of the day, man, my family supported me. My family supported me, man. Once I got caught up in my situation, like I told you guys before, my father told me, Eric, you better be careful. They giving people life sentences for murder, right? I told him, oh man, don't worry, Dad, I'm not gonna get caught. So after I ended up doing what I did, I put the guns up. I hid the guns. I called my father the next day. He went and got the guns. He moved the guns, took them, got rid of them. My father ended up passing away in 2003. So I can say all this stuff now. But so it was just a trip how my father, who didn't support me whatsoever initially when I was 15, 16 or whatever, how he came to basically just, aid me, help me as much as possible, right? So I love my father. My father was always a very, good dad, man. Growing up from the age of about 8, 9, me and my brother, we've always had motorcycles. all types of stuff. And I believe a lot of that is because due to the fact that my father grew up in the country, Blackstone, Virginia, in a small little poor town. He didn't have anything. He didn't have much. And so he wanted his sons, me and my brother, to have everything. You know, I went back to visit my father's mother with my father, like in maybe 1987, 88 in Blackstone, Virginia. And the place that they was living in still had a well. They didn't have any running water in the house. They actually had an outhouse, you know, in 1987. In Blackstone, Virginia, right? But my Uncle Herman, who lived maybe about 2 or 3 miles down the street, he had everything. He electricity, TV, bathroom, all that. But it was just in the particular house that my father and them had grew up in. His mother was still staying in that house. His family was still staying in that house. And they had an outhouse, which is a bathroom outside. Maybe a bathroom. They basically lived in the woods, you know. So they had cut out a space and build a house, and it was surrounded by the woods. Maybe the railroad tracks was maybe about 100 yards from the house. Every time it would go by, you know, the damn near house would rattle. It was a wooden house, so it was crazy, right? So yeah, I just think about how my father was so against drugs, but later on, once I got in trouble, you know, he was my number one support system, right? You know, always was there for me, doing what he could. And before I got caught up in my situation, when I would come down from Montana to re-up, get more drugs, and then go back to Montana, every single time my father took me to the airport and before I got on the plane, my father would cry. He would be over there crying, you know, telling me, "See you later, Dad." Okay, you know, see you later. Every single time, man. And like I said, at this point in time, I'm 19, 20 years old, you know. My father did not once cry when it was time for me to leave, man. So I love my dad, man. And it's just a sad situation that, like I said, when I was locked up in prison, 2003, my father passed away. So living this type of lifestyle, it took me away from my father. It took me away from being able to be there for him when he passed away. Eventually my father got diabetes and then dementia. He wasn't taking his insulin, and so he would get disorientated, right? And eventually he was outside working on a car, and the car ended up falling on him, and he couldn't free himself from the car or whatever, or something like that. You know, I'll have to give you guys that story later on if you guys are interested in that story. But due to that reason, eventually he had to go into a nursing home. And so he later on passed away in the nursing home, which always was something suspicious, because I never knew or felt that he had anything that was life-threatening, right? But he had become combative in the nursing home, and so I always believed that one of those nurses did something to him in there. But that's another story. But anyway, you already know who it is. I hope I didn't ramble on too much. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.
I swear to God, the game is cold, homie.
What you mean?
I popped on a pussy ass nigga after he stole on me.
What happened next?
That nigga came to court and told on me.
Put that on something.
I sold my soul, homie. Called the highway patrol on me, plus the sheriffs and cops. He told him my name was Eric and I carried a Glock. Soon as you start blowing shots, them niggas going to jail. Don't have a meeting with the cops and then you going to jail. They'll tell him about the shooting, take him, show him his well. DA trying to seal your cash, they gon' throw him the nails. They wanna throw me up in the cell and have me with a L again. Back to strip searchers and guards, read my mail again. Had me far away in the bay, I'm talking Pelican. Eating cold ass soy burgers and warm gelatin. I'm far too intelligent to fall for that twice. Niggas yelling gang gang and ain't about that life. And they'll turn rat right in front of your face. Get you found guilty plus 100 years on the case. Your mama in the court with tears running all on her face. Her baby shackled feet, hands and waist.
Goddamn.
These niggas ain't who they say they is, so beware. Fuck what they sayin', cause these cowards ain't playing fair. They shoot at you, you shoot at them, they snitch, and they don't care. Fuck gang banging, I'd rather be a square. These niggas ain't who they say they is, so beware. Fuck what they sayin', cause these cowards ain't playing fair. They shoot at you, you shoot at them, they snitch, and they don't care. Fuck gang banging, I'd rather be a square. Yeah. Doing life's no joke, I been where the apes been. You ain't really bout that smoke, you a vape pen. Soon as they catch a joke, in the feds on a state pen. That tough guy shit get shed quick like snake skin. Real and fake men can't exist together. I stayed down, you turn snitch, so you a bitch forever. Imagine me snitch never, boy, I stuck to the code. You hit the county for a month, you said fuck it and told. Soon as you heard your bitch Nicole was fucking all of your best friend, the news damn near killed you, nigga, caved your chest in. You told about the murders that y'all did on the West End. Who was popping the burners and the one who said lesbian. Cooperated then, signed an affidavit. Felt your life was over, nigga, you was trying to save it. So you told on Antoine, LeBron, Brian, and David. Came home and half your hood forgave it. Goddamn.
These niggas ain't who they say they is, so beware. Fuck what they sayin', cause these cowards ain't playing fair. They shoot at you, you shoot at them, they snitch, and they don't care. Fuck gang banging, I'd rather be a square. These niggas ain't who they say they is, so beware. Fuck what they sayin', cause these cowards ain't playing fair. They shoot at you, you shoot at them, they snitch, and they don't care. Fuck gang banging, I'd rather be a square. Yeah.